Adobe Acrobat Studio, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared PDF space. You've got your docs, your plans, your specs, and then invite the crew to build what's next. They talk up the teamwork. Here's an updated render. They think that this design could be a contender. And when somebody wonders what's the next step, AI helps you finish the rest. Bolts are tight, now your plan's refined. Run a smoother business when you're all aligned. Do that with Acrobat. Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Of course, the big news, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, the first woman Chief of Staff in history who very ably helmed Donald Trump's comeback bid for the presidency in 2024, has been diagnosed early, thank God, with breast cancer. The president putting out a statement saying Susie Wiles, an incredible chief of staff, a great person, and one of the strongest people I know, but unfortunately has been diagnosed with early breast cancer and has decided to take this challenge immediately as opposed to waiting. She has a fantastic medical team and her prognosis is excellent. During the treatment period, she will be spending virtually full time at the White House, which makes me, as president, very happy. Her strength and her commitment to continue doing the job she loves and does so well while undergoing these treatments tells you everything you need to know about Susie Wiles. Susie, as one of my closest and most important advisors, is tough and deeply committed to serving the American people. She will soon be better than ever. Melania and I are with her in every way, and we look forward to working with Susie on the many big and wonderful things that are happening for the benefit of our country, signed President Donald Trump. Now, Susie Wiles has a long and fabled political history. She's, of course, the daughter of the famous sportscaster Pat Summerall, but she really first came to political prominence when she successfully elected outsider Rick Scott to the governorship of Florida. Rick Scott was a hospital executive who wanted to serve. The party favorite was Attorney General Bill McCollum, but Rick Scott, with the able help of Susie Wiles, came out of nowhere to win not only the nomination, but then to elect Rick Scott, who went on to become both a great conservative governor of Florida and later on a U.S. senator. That brought Susie Wiles to the attention of Donald Trump. In 2016, Susie Wiles could have worked for Marco Rubio, could have worked for Governor Jeb Bush of her home state of Florida. Instead, she went to work for Donald Trump, and frankly, if she had not been parachuted into Florida in the closing days of the 2016 race, I doubt that Trump would have carried the state. Then, of course, the president asked Susie Wiles to go into the campaign of Ron DeSantis because it was a fiasco. DeSantis had been endorsed by Donald Trump in 2018. Now, what Donald Trump never knew was that in 2016, when they were both on the ballot, Ron DeSantis refused to endorse Donald Trump, fearing that Trump would somehow pull the ticket down. In fact, in the end, Trump won bigger in DeSantis' district than DeSantis won. But once Trump became president, DeSantis decided to reinvent himself as a stout defender of Donald Trump in the Russian collusion hoax, and a last-minute endorsement by Donald Trump actually catapulted Ron DeSantis to the governor's nomination. Virtually every Republican county chairman, every Republican state senator, every member of the House, all the members of Congress, other than my friend Matt Gaetz, had endorsed Adam Putnam, who was the favorite. But Putnam himself said the endorsement by Trump of Ron DeSantis was like a seismic nuclear explosion. And of course, then President Trump had to come to Florida to drag Ron DeSantis over the finish line by a mere 15,000 votes out of, I think it was 5.5 million cast. But it was at the request of Donald Trump that Susie Wiles joined the DeSantis entourage, and she was really the one who engineered DeSantis's narrow victory. Only several months later to be thrown to the curbs. Susie Wiles was working quite ably as an advisor to the state Republican committee, to Ron DeSantis' super PAC, to President Trump's reelection campaign, and holding down a full-time job as a public affairs consultant and lobbyist when, for reasons no one has really understood, Casey DeSantis went on a rampage, and Susie Wiles was dismissed from all of those jobs on the same day. Not many Republicans wanted to defend Susie Wiles then, but if you look it up in Politico, I said, and I quote, "Ron DeSantis will rue the day he did this," and indeed it was so. When Donald Trump decided that he was going to run for the White House again, the first person he called was Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles eagerly signed on what on paper I think should have looked like a near impossible task, but then teaming with the extraordinarily capable Chris LaCivita and with the help of, in my opinion, the best pollster today in the Republican Party, the best survey researcher, among the best strategists, New York's own Tony Fabrizio, they ran a near perfect campaign. And during the campaign, Susie Wiles was also much maligned. People kept insisting we weren't prepared for election integrity when we were. People kept insisting that the party, that the campaign didn't know what they were doing. Corey Lewandowski launched at least one failed coup attempt to take over the campaign. That was slapped down relatively quickly. And of course, Susie Wiles emerged a winner. Now, I must tell you, as someone who has known Donald Trump for over 50 years, Susie Wiles has that elusive quality in that she knows her client. You see, Donald Trump is not handled, he's not managed, he's not scripted, he's not cajoled, he's not led any place. He asks for information, but he's very much his own man. The only thing that you can say, the only thing I have to say, the only thing predictable about Donald Trump is he's completely unpredictable. And Susie Wiles has brought order into what in the 2016 and the 2020 campaign was chaos. So there's a system in place for information to be synthesized, for the president to be given options. Susie Wiles, I think, like every presidential chief of staff, she takes the heat for things she had nothing to do with. No one ever wants to say, the president made a stupid mistake here. So instead they say, well, the president must be getting bad advice. That's part of the job. But people need to understand, if there had been no Susie Wiles, there would never have been the great alliance with RFK and the Maha movement. Susie Wiles was one of the earliest advocates, told me all about the books of Casey and Callie Means and how your diet can change your life. And indeed, in my case, it has. Susie Wiles has been a major supporter of the Maha agenda. But most specifically, it was Susie Wiles who negotiated the alliance in which Donald Trump and at that point Robert F. Kennedy, who had qualified on many ballots to run as independent, teamed up post-Butler. It was Susie Wiles who negotiated that deal. Now, as someone who is very early into the health choice movement, my family and I are praying for Susie Wiles. What the president said is true. She's the toughest person I know. When Susie Wiles looks at you, you don't know whether she's about to break your kneecaps or bake you a casserole. She's been a friend of mine for 30 years. We worked together in Ronald Reagan's campaign for president in 1980. We worked together in Jack Kemp's campaign in 1988. She is an incredibly capable and organized woman. And I hope that she will avail herself of some of the alternative treatments. My wife is a cancer survivor. I've talked about it here in the Stone Zone. And I'm convinced that her life was saved by a combination of both Eastern and Western medicines. I also think that there are, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving any medical advice to anyone, but there are drugs like menbendazole, which is a derivative of fenbendazole, which is an FDA-approved drug. I think it is this would be an off-label use. It's approved for use with animals. So it was with ivermectin. Ivermectin, of course, won a Nobel Peace Prize to save so many lives. Also, I believe studies show it quite effective against cancer. So I pray for Susie Wiles. I know she will beat this. She's the most effective White House chief of staff in history, and because she understands Donald Trump. And she understands how he wants the flow of information to go. She has the hardest job in the world because, as I say, Trump is not some marionette. He is very, very much his own man. She ran, in my opinion, probably the best Republican campaign for the presidency in American history, and we here at the Stone Zone wish her a speedy recovery, although it sounds to me like she's going to stay on the job. I'm glad I was able to clear up some of the false attacks on her. This idea that she was a lobbyist for Pfizer. That's another of my favorite ones. She worked for a short time as a partner, not a stakeholder or an equity holder, in a 346-person firm. She did not represent Pfizer. Someone else in the firm did. That was for a brief period. So this idea that she's a big pharma agent, that's a slur, and it's a falsehood. I don't think Trump would have won this election without her and her excellent judgment.